Hello, I'm Bonnie Curlin. I am the coordinator for gifted and talented education and novice teacher mentoring and retention. I am presenting today different lessons for different needs. I'm going to start with a video that helps you see one of the reasons you might need to create different lessons for your students.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? A tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which, anyone raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve, you will get exactly the same amount of revenue as at this point. This is very controversial. Does anyone know what Vice President Bush called this in 1980? Anyone? Something DOO economics. Voodoo economics.
So as you can see, one disadvantage might be boredom in the classroom if you are just talking and talking and talking and you're not engaging your students. What I have seen is not just the boredom, but that students will start acting up. If they're bored, they're going to entertain themselves. Different lessons may help with that. So if you experience misbehavior in the classroom, you need to do something about it. First, you have to look at your children. What do the students already know? Do you know me? Assess my needs. Determine what I already know. Pre-assessment is the best way to find out if they know something. You find out what they already know before you teach anything. Drats, I have to leave the room. Could you teach me the lesson in a shorter time than the rest, and then go into more detail for those who need more time with the lesson? As you may notice, I've also connected it to the TESS evaluation as you are being evaluated by your administrators in your building. When you meet the needs of individual children, it will help you with your TESS evaluation. What if you spent time with RTI, response to intervention, or helping with concepts that I already know? Why can't the other reading group meet so I don't miss anything? And again, this is when students leave the room for a variety of reasons. For their gifted pullout that's 150 minutes, they're missing something. Do you really want them to miss while they're gone? I'm in your room and doing the same thing as everyone else. Perhaps you could give me something different. If you're going to do response to intervention for the students that need help and support, why should you not do that for your gifted learners who need gifted services? There are three methods of differentiating. One of them is product. Product is what I have seen is the most common. It seems to be the easiest way to differentiate for teachers. You change what the student creates or produces. Let me be involved in what the final product is. I could even help create the rubric. Having students create the rubric will also make you a higher rating on the test evaluation. Process is another way to differentiate. I don't have to get the same learning by the same process, but the final result is that I do learn the same thing. Teach me the different ways I can get to the same end result. One process may work better for me than your favorite way or the current methods. I've seen this done with math strategies. And how does the student learn to get that solution to the math problem? You may not even think of the same ways that students could think of how to get the right answer. Another way to differentiate is content. Does the content of what I learn have to be the same? Could I learn the same objective with different content? November 2008, in Educational Leadership, The Goals of Differentiation, Tomlinson named the following 3 elements. Now, 2008 may seem like a long time ago, but differentiation has been around for a long time, and Tomlinson is still around and writing on it, and there are so many articles and so many books on differentiation. Differentiation provides a structure that supports trust by enabling teachers to actively and optimistically support each student's learning. A second element that gives students ownership of their learning is making sure that the learning fits the student. You have to know your students. Voice, the third element, is an extension and refinement of thought that gives students power over their own destinies as learners. As you could see from our video at the beginning, there was no student voice. No one was talking, even though he would say, anyone, anyone, and try to get them to talk. I have provided a handout. You can also find it on the internet, Common Gifted Education Myths. I have some resources. 1993 looks a little old as well, and 96 and 2004. But these are articles on taking care of gifted students. And I have many, many books that are more recent. Common Gifted Education Myths from the National Association for Gifted Children, a myth that all children are gifted. Yes, they're all deserving. Yes, they can all benefit from rigor and a variety of things in the classroom. They're all going to benefit from differentiation because you're meeting their individual needs. What about meeting the state standards? Doug Reeves, 2013 webinar. What is evidence of proficiency that is significantly beyond that standard? Not just a little better, not just quantitatively better, but qualitatively more complex, more rigorous. So you have a handout on rigor from Kingor. I am going to give you a minute to read what rigor is and what rigor is not. I do not need to read this out loud to you. If you would please look at this slide or your handout, you have 1 minute. So, options connected to state standards for gifted students. Students who know and can do the standards at their current grade level could be exposed to those similar strands a grade level or 2 higher. To create differentiated learning, you have to determine what is rigorous. This may take a little longer than a minute to read, but I'm going to give you another minute. So if you will look at this, you'll see that there are rows for cognitive demand, academic strategies, engaging qualities. There are what they list as the power components. And then level 1, you'll see, begins with recall. Number 2, understand. 3, apply, analyze. 4, evaluate and create. There is a rigor divide, you see, with the double line. I'm going to give you a minute to look at these. Let's look at some tiered lessons. Now, this is a little bit different idea connected to differentiation, where you start with something that is just right for the whole classroom. The thing that you do and say, this is my lesson. This is what these students at this grade level need to learn, and this is how they're going to learn it, and this is how I'm going to present it. This particular method of doing tiered from differentiated instruction, staff development for educators, is a 6-day training. So realize I am giving this to you in just a few minutes. To really be trained in this, you actually look at all these lessons, you practice, and then you look at them and you practice going from just right to loosening and making it less complex, going from just right and making it tighter or bumping it up to help the gifted students in the room. So let's look at a few of these. So a science lesson in elementary, just the water cycle. Something that is just right. With your partner, use the science book to review the water cycle. Explain the water cycle to your classmates with a picture, skit, or song. That's what you would think, here is my lesson, this is what I want to do. But then, what do you do to tier it, to make a less complex task so that the students that are struggling still learn what they need to learn? You give them the graphic organizer and they label the parts of the water cycle. So then you would have to think, but how do I bump it up? How do I tighten it or make it more complex or more rigorous? Here's an example of going from just right to more rigorous. Language arts in middle school, idioms. We start with just right. What would you create for your classroom? So the teacher provides a list of common idioms. The students choose 2 idioms with similar true meanings. How are they the same? How are they different? This compare and contrast, of course, is a nice level of rigor for everyone in the classroom. Illustrate these similarities and difference through pictures and words. Include the true meanings of the idioms. But we want to tighten it. We want to bump it up, make it more complex for some of the students that need the more complexity in the room. Create an idiom of your own. Use pictures and words to illustrate several different situations in which that idiom could be used. Include the idiom's true meaning in the illustration. An example from high school, algebra. Again, we start with just right before we do the loosened or the tightened. With a partner, what would the teacher have them do? Determine and specify the related function of a new problem. Write a mathematical definition of the specific function in your own words, and then create a graph of the function. Read the non-mathematical definition of the function provided by the teacher. Compare and contrast the two definitions using a graphic organizer. That's what would be the actual lesson. Then you have to think, how would I loosen it, make it less complex to help those who are struggling? So with a partner, review the problem that was demonstrated by the teacher, recall the related function, write a mathematical definition, create a graph, read the non-mathematical definition of the function provided by the teacher, compare and contrast the two definitions using a Venn diagram. Then you have to then think, how would I bump this up? And of course, our algebra teachers in the room can come up with lots of ideas. You, as your content knowledge, you as a teacher, and your content, you will be able to know, start with the just right, realize how can I loosen it, how can I tighten it. I am not an algebra person, so I would bow to the algebra teachers, the math people in the room. Now, that tiered training is a 6-day training. Half a day of that training is curriculum compacting. Now, obviously, I am not spending a half a day teaching you curriculum compacting, but from staff development of educators, I did want to pull a few slides to explain the quick version of curriculum compacting. So, based on a pre-assessment, as you've already heard me say, you have got to pre-assess. About 57% of your students will come to your classroom already knowing what you think you're going to teach them, and they already know it. So pre-assess. Information and skills that a student has already mastered, you don't have to do again. Eliminate them from the curriculum. If the whole class knows it, why are you going to teach it to them? Steps for curriculum compacting. Identify the key content standards that all students must know, understand, or be able to do within the context of a unit. Life science, Civil War, whatever that is, what are the key concepts, the key standards? Assess their understanding of these content standards. And what you probably will find is they don't all know it, so that you'll have some that know it and some don't. You identify those students who already have an understanding of these content standards. With those advanced learners, explore possible independent or small group topics of study that extend the students' learning. They already know it. How can you extend their learning beyond what they already know? And because some students say, I already know it, I'm done, I don't have to do anything, you may need to create a contract that describes this independent or small group study. Give them due dates, give them rules, have a rubric to assess their product. They can be involved in creating that rubric, as I've already said. Decide how and with whom a project will be shared. So here's a sample of a product menu, so that a student can select the product. I will show what I know by, and then here are lots of choices. When their plan is complete, when their project is complete. Here is a more detailed compacting contract. The extension topic, questions to be investigated, description of product of learning, the rules they are following, and here's the rubric. What means I'm just a 1? I didn't do so hot, didn't work very hard at it, didn't produce what I should have produced, I'm not showing that I learned anything. Or what's a 4? What really goes above and beyond, and look how well I'm showing my learning. And if the student's creating that, again, that helps you on your test evaluation that the student created the rubric. Compacting record. So here's the academic area, unit of study or concept or skill. What is the documentation of mastery? What is the extension activity? And then comments. Please consider these when compacting, that collaboration with the student is taking place, that it's appropriate challenge level. Again, you have to know your students. What's appropriate? How far can you push them? How far can you challenge them? You don't want to push them so far that they give up and quit because it's too hard. But you don't want them to be bored. You haven't pushed them hard enough. And again, we're working on that challenge and helping them so that they can meet challenges in their future as well and persevere. And then think of scheduling. When is all this taking place? Timeline? When should it all be finished? And then any logistics you need to think of in the process. So there is a continuum. If you think one size fits all, we're not differentiating in any way. But we're all on a journey and we're all learning and growing and getting better and better at differentiation. Even my experienced teachers have to work on this. It is a constant learning process. And so, curriculum compacting, the tiered learning, is all up there at the differentiation level. Different lessons for different needs. Please develop relationships and rapport with your students to meet their needs.